What's up, y'all, and welcome back to the Michael Experience Podcast. I am your orator and originator, Michael, and these are my thoughts, my life, my way. All right, so let's get into it, y'all. I had a thought as I was mentoring recently, and it was really the notion, prospect, ideology of being accountable, right? I think that as people, we are great at pointing out the flaws in others and holding other people accountable to a standard, to the rules, to some level of, checklist or form or decorum. But when it's time for us to do the same thing for ourselves, we try to find a way out of it or a loophole, or we find some ounce of leniency or just extra compassion and often deflection. And so I really want to talk about self accountability and how important it is, not just for you, not just for you in affirming who you are, realizing who you are, and just walking more confidently in it, but also the ability for you to do it wholeheartedly and to use it as a growth mechanism. I see so many times when I'm having conversations with people, or I hear, should I say, when I'm speaking to people, that they will point out every single thing wrong in a situation. They will point out all the negative things in the situation. And the moment you say, okay, what part do you own in that? What is your onus in that? People get quiet. Okay. Because for whatever reason, when it comes to ourselves, we're like, well, all of those are external factors. So if it's not an internal problem, it ain't got nothing to do with me. Fully negating, trying to obfuscate, trying to skate around the fact that we keep putting ourselves in these environments in which these things are happening. And so at what point do we take onus and responsibility for that and changing that if it's not what we want and it's not, it doesn't resonate with who we are and who we want to become? I see very often, I observe very often out in the world that people will be in relationships, and the moment somebody does something, they're like, well, they did this and they did that. And the moment I say, well, what is your onus in that? Like, what do you think you could have done differently? I can't make grown people do nothing. They do their own things. And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And I'm not asking because I want to assign blame. I think that's the problem. Number one, with trying to find self accountability or trying to enforce self accountability, is that the defense mechanism kicks in and it tells us that, oh, we're victim shaming and we're blaming. That's, if you're looking at it that way, that is very surface level and that negates growth. Because any situation that you step foot in, any situation that you participate in, any type of action that you ensue in, of, thereabouts, or around, you have played into it in some part, whether it may be positively intentioned or negative. You've played a role in some part. And although maybe somebody, being destructive, the act of them doing it is not your fault. And it is not necessarily an effect that comes directly from you, but your own self determination, self evaluation, devaluation, your effect that comes from the situation has to do with the way that you allowed yourself to move in that space. And I give you a variation of words because we like to mince words and play and pull straws or split straws, as they say, split hairs, as they say. So I want to cover all the variations just in case you try to get an excuse out of it, okay? Because we're not doing that over here. It's not about making you responsible or accountable to what somebody did. It's about how you can step in on your own behalf, intercede on your own intellect, emotional, whatever else you've got going on. How do you intercede on your own behalf so that you don't find your way back in those same situations. Because as I've said before, and I believe Winston Churchill said it best, those that fail to learn from their lessons are doomed to repeat it. Now, I might be paraphrasing, or that could be a direct quote, but the message still stands. You can't keep putting yourself in situations over and over again, and because you feel like it wasn't by your hands, that it's not your fault, although you're feeling the negative effects as well. Now, there are levels to that. There are levels to punishment, atonement, and all those things. There's levels to it. So maybe you're not behind bars, but the optics of your adjacency are still there, right? The court of public opinion has put put you there, has convicted you. And then all of that self doubt, self worry, self deprecation that you're going to do because of it, self doubting you're going to do because of it, all is a consequence nonetheless. Amen. So we have to do better at being accountable in conversations. And instead of wanting to be defensive, we have to look at it as a growth opportunity. So that means checking yourself sometimes before you wrecking yourself, because I'm not perfect. I am not perfect. There are times where somebody will say something to me and I'm like, ugh, I could have sworn I had this figured out already. And there's a part of me that's like, damn, I made that mistake. That's a rookie mistake. But then I realized I'm human just like everybody else. And so I push past that uncomfortable part where I feel like it's an indictment on my character or my morals or my values or whatever I hold dear. I'm like, okay, you know what? This isn't even an indictment on that. This is just a call to action. This is somebody calling out or mirroring or reflecting to me, whatever sounds better to you, something that isn't good or isn't a good look or feeling. They're my soundboard at this point. And if they're people that really care about you, sometimes it is people who care about you, sometimes it's not. But either way, sometimes it can be very valuable information because you needed it. Okay. Whether you got the book over here, over there, the contents of it sometimes are still good. Amen. Ooh, I'm on fire today. But it's very important that you are open to that self accountability and that you are looking at it as a tool for growth. I found myself in situations with friends more than once where I'm like, God, I keep showing up to these events. I'm not having a good time. And then it goes left. I don't know about you, but I think we've all had a friend that can take things just a little bit too far, a little bit too far. And that's whether they're going to argue with somebody, whether they're going to fight with somebody, whether they're going to try to pull you into something that you've been like, I don't get down like that. You know what I'm saying? It's all of those things. And it's easy to say, well, that's on them, but you keep on showing up. And if you just said no, or you decided to do something different, you decided to intercede on your own behalf, the course of things with your friendship there or somewhere else may be different. Because sometimes the effect is that you look at friendships differently. You can't value them the same. You walk into, new relationships, and where it concerns trust, you're already at a deficit. And even if somebody is trying to make a deposit, you've already had this negative equity built up and they can't repay it. It's not their debt to repay. How many times have you done that and said, it is not me, it is them? I've done it. And I had to get real honest with myself about myself for myself. And although my intentions are great when I walk into a room, I want everybody to win. I want everybody to have a good time. I want everybody to make money. I'm like, yo, if I got something I can help with, you know what I'm saying, and they're going to put me off too much, let me go ahead and contribute. But I realize that not everybody wants that and not everybody values the world the same way that I do. The value that I place on having a big home and a nice vehicle and to be able to take trips is not the same value somebody else places there. You understand? To me, having a nice comfy sofa doesn't mean the same thing to the next person. They good with a chair or a bar stool. Uh-huh. I like steak. I like tea and crumpets. Okay. I like lobster and seafood towers. Somebody else is good with a double cheeseburger meal at McDonald's. Priorities are just different. Where people place their values are different. And even though my intentions are great, and I'm like, I want everybody to have the best of the best, sometimes people don't want that. And so you continue on operating in your own mindset, projecting your own mindset, your own values on people when that's not what they want. And the reason and how you know it's not what they want is because they keep working in opposition to it, but you keep showing up, hustling backwards. So I had to realize that about some friendships, relationships, just at large with people, that I keep showing up thinking that everybody else has the same intentions, the same morals, the same values. We want the same thing, and we really don't. My accountability isn't in the fact that they are doing wayward and shifty things. My accountability is I keep showing up, and I'm showing up with there's nothing wrong with the way they think. Listen, there's nothing wrong with the way they think. It's easy to say that. They are being exactly who they are, and they are showing me exactly who they are. I'm the one showing up with the flawed thinking because for some reason I think that I am more important and that my values, morals, and my pathway is more important than theirs. Even if the world at large or a mass group of people like Michael, I don't understand why people wouldn't want those things. That's just not what they want. And so my accountability is I need to stop showing up and projecting whatever it is that I'm projecting on them. We don't have the same goals. We don't have the same ideologies. We don't share the same passion. Now, some of you gonna miss the boat on this one, so let me slow it down and let me tell them not to unanchor the boat real quick, okay? I'm not saying that you're gonna 100% agree with your friends all the time. I'm not saying that you guys are gonna always have 100% of the same thought processes and any of that. There are people that are going to come around you that don't know what they want and they need to figure it out. And sometimes proximity and adjacency will help. People see you striving and they're like, you know what? I'm going to take that and I'm going to apply it there. But those people have to have a growth mindset. That is the difference. Defensive people are not people who are looking to grow. You either pick being defensive or you pick being developmental. Developmental people look at the opportunity and everything. Every conversation is a developmental note. Every conversation is a developmental point in some way, shape, or form. What can I learn from this moment? What can I take from this moment and apply to the next one so that it's better? Defensive people find the negative. Defensive people find a way to circumvent rules, to circumvent accountability, responsibility, atonement. Defensive people look for the fight and everything. And I don't find that productive unless you're in a debate. Maybe it'll work on the debate stage. But in real world application relationships at large, not just romantic, every type of relationship out there, defensive people are working in opposition of development and they don't have a growth mindset. And so when you realize that that is happening, it's time for you to go because that is your accountability. And if by some chance you have fueled those negative desires and those negative interactions, maybe you put a battery in somebody's back, I don't know. Your onus is to walk away from that situation and not do it again. Your onus is not to employ tacit approval. That's when you see something and you know you should say something but you don't. Oh, they doing wrong, but that's okay. It's cool. You walk right on by. That's tacit approval. Your onus going forward, your accountability is saying, you know what? If I ever see that in my circle again, if I ever see that in my environment, I'm not gonna walk by it. I'm gonna be like, listen, hey, that ain't right what you doing over there. Or hey, I notice you need help with something. Let me see what I can do. It ain't gonna take me but a minute. because it works in that way too. Sometimes we will be selfish in a moment, right, to prove a point. You know, silence can be a terror too. I hope you know. It's that person that is showing up on your team every day doing their best. And all it would take from you is a few moments to nurture, inspire, to influence, to cultivate, to mentor. And you walk past them every day, you're like, nope, I'm gonna let them learn on their own. Nope, I'm not gonna say anything. If they fail, it's their fault. Nope, I had to climb the ladder, so they're gonna have to climb too. I don't care how many legs that fell off in the last decade. They'll make it up. It is those things too. Your accountability in that is being a decent person. Your accountability is adding more deposits to your moral bank than you allow to be taken away from you. Your onus is hopefully understanding that as people, we are meant to be here in this world to give more to it than we take from it. And so when I go back to my earlier point, right, it's very easy to point at other people and be like, them, them. But the accountability of self requires you to think about something more intrinsic and more of value internally. What does that say about me? Is how I look at it. What does it say about me if I walk past this knowing I could have done something? What does that say about me if I continue to show up? What does that say about me? And sure, you can say, I don't care about what other people think. It's not about that. It is what you think, feel, and believe about yourself when you realize and acknowledge things about yourself that may not be great. I find myself constantly challenging that in the spirit of my personal goals. I do believe that I was meant to be a battery of sorts for people to help charge their ambitions and their dreams and their career aspirations and whatever else. I would say I'm a cheerleader, but it's more than that. Because when I speak, people listen. And when I don't speak, people are looking to me because they want to listen. I had to learn that. I spent a long time running away from being in front of people. And if I'm being very honest with you, before and in some forms, honestly, this podcast is a way that I've done it. I know that there's value in words. I know there's value in having somebody that can analyze and synthesize in the moment. I know that there is power in having representation and visibility of someone such as myself. I know that it's important in the world we live in, especially now where everything is highly visual, auditory, and highly sensationalized. I know. But I was like, I'm not about to do that. And I pray to God. I only know one. Well, whoever you pray to, that's fine. I ain't putting it down. It's whatever. I'm not yucking nobody's yum or nothing. I don't even care nothing about that. But I praise God. Okay. And I say to him, like, what is it that you would have me do? And there's this gnawing feeling that's like, you need to be using your voice that I gave you. Okay. And I've already let you know that people want to hear your voice. And I've showed you in many ways that people want to hear your voice. And I'm like, no, that ain't what you said. No, you didn't say it loud enough. Please. Every time I think I'm not going to do it, it's like something pushes me right back to it. And I'm like, Jesus. But I can't tell you how many times I've tried to be in a room and be like, I'm not going to contribute to that conversation, but something gnaws at me on the inside. And I'm like, ooh, Michael, you could bring some clarity. You could bring some intersectionality to that conversation. If only you just got involved. And then I'm like, no, I'm going to sit on the outside. I've done it in my personal life. I've done it in social media. I've done it in my professional career too. I'm not ashamed to admit that I've done those things. I've walked past group discussions. I walked past the new person that I was like, God, if I just spent a couple moments with them, they would be much better for themselves and much better for other people. And I'll be like, oh, well, it's going to be a headache today. But acknowledging that is the first step. You have to acknowledge it. It's like, oh God, I do that. And there are times when I say, you know what, Michael, let me circle back. Like, let me circle back. Even if I don't want to get in on the conversation at that moment, I might circle back and say, you know what? Y'all had a conversation, and I do believe I have something to add. And maybe we get on a phone call, or maybe there's an open panel discussion, right? Where we can, have some brevity and, we can have some depth. But it's a level of conscious work that I'm doing because it feeds an inner value system for me. It has some inspirational and aspirational value for who I want to become at the end of me during the duration, but also at the end of. And that is what self accountability looks like. It's saying the quiet thing out loud about yourself, with yourself, for yourself, and just challenging yourself to be better than that moment. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't going to be times where you have to say no, and it's just no. Sometimes accountability is saying just no, this ain't for me. I can't add nothing to this situation. So at the very least, I don't want to take nothing away from it. And I'm good with that too. I'm good with that too. I'm like, yeah, no, I can't add nothing to it. But listen, at the very least, I ain't gonna take nothing away from it. Player, peace out. You know. But being accountable to yourself requires a level of truth, a level of insight, a level of being uncomfortable, and then just a level of openness to move past it and to not judge yourself too harshly. We are some of our worst critics, and I'll go back to my earlier point. We feel like everything that we didn't put on our list of greatness, everything that somebody says is different than that is an indictment on our character. And we have to be defensive. No, we have to be developmental. We have to look at those moments and say, okay, I'm gonna take what I can from it and I will apply it next time. That don't mean you take everything in every situation. You got to use your filters now. Not everything is for everybody, okay? But you do have to do the work on yourself because that's how you grow. Sometimes for me, that is listening to people who say, or several people who say, Michael, have you thought about that? And I'm like, no. Should I think about that? Why should I think about that? I'm going to have questions. And there is nothing wrong with asking questions. I don't know why people feel like that is just some, wild concept or something that shouldn't be done, but you have to ask questions. And sometimes people, to ask the questions makes you feel silly. But if you ask not, you will know not. Okay. So just ask the question. I find myself more often than not these days hearing terminology or or being a part of different experiences, and I have to phone a friend or tap a friend on the shoulder and be like, friend, what does that mean? Listen, friend, what does that mean? Oh, that's that. I'm like, okay. And then I'll get to Google or something later on to see if I can, inform or add more context to, what I'm trying to figure out. But you got to ask questions. If you're trying to be bigger, you're trying to be better, that's going to require you to expand and open up. It's going to cause you to you're going to have to do some things that you have never done before. And I promise you, each time you do something you've never done before, it's uncomfortable at first for one reason or another. Either it's the newness of it, either it's the hard work. Because listen, when you've never done it, everything is hard, ain't it? You're like, golly, ooh, how many steps is it gonna be? Oh my God, that just looks like a lot of parts. And then once you get into it, you like, just like everything else. Yeah, this might have been more intricate, but I got this. I still got the skills to do it. And you added something else to your bucket or your tool belt. And that, ladies, gentlemen, and they, them, is self accountability. It's growth. But you can't be afraid to tap into it, and you can't be afraid to be told that you're wrong and just have the discussion about what that looks like. And then hopefully in some moments yourself, yourself awareness grows and you realize it before somebody had you like, ooh, I misspoke. Or right before you're about to misspeak, you're like, ooh, you know what? Because I've been here before. And I've had those moments too. I'll be in a room full of people and I'm like, ooh, and I'll be forming something in my mind and I'm like, ooh. Then I'm like, know what, Mike? Let this come to its completion before you make an assessment or an assertion. Hold on, because you might say the wrong thing and you need the full context. Because that too is something that we miss as people. Like we hear a couple of things or we see a couple of things and we are ready to feel like we have a fully and informed opinion and or assessment, and then we start talking and we haven't even let the person finish their thought. We haven't even let them finish. So I have to tell myself, don't wait, because they may be getting to it. I also don't like when people do that to me, like when I'm starting a thought and I haven't even landed the plane yet and somebody starts interjecting. I'm like, stop, stop, because that's not where I was going with this. And you've already blocked out your mind from being able to receive something new or something different because in your mind you've already associated with something else. But I have to tell myself not to do the same thing. I have to tell myself not to do the same thing because I sometimes seen it going that way. Now, in my development, I almost said in my defense. In my development, I'm typically right. And I don't say that in a boastful way. I just say that in a very experiential way, and that I've because of the work I've done, I can typically see where things are going and I can hear it as people are explaining. However, that doesn't mean that I need to cut people off and interject that I fully understand, but I generally am in my mind thinking through solutions, right? Some what ifs. I usually am at any moment thinking of 3 to 4 solutions based on what I think is coming. Very seldomly is it something outside of that. Um, but I do stop myself because you just never know. Somebody will throw a wrench in there, and I will be like, "Well, wait a minute, let's back up," And I'm like, "Wait a minute, okay." So for clarity, for clarity, may I? I always do that because I think asking people permission to get deeper with them is very important. And I think it makes people feel safer. May I? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like, okay. Now you said, now that's new for me. So being accountable to whatever your situation, your level of interaction, your level of relationship is important. And I wanted to make sure that I had the conversation to whoever wanted to listen and grow and develop, or somebody that just may have been struggling with what that looks like or what examples of it might be, and maybe wondering if somebody else was going through the same thing. I think it is self accountability is not a one time. It's not a one time journey. It's not a one time conversation with self or peers. It is ongoing. As long as you live, as long as you grow, as long as you continue to interact, you will hold yourself accountable. But accountability is not an indictment on your character. And we have to remember that. By showing up as who you say you are, when you say you're going to do it, how you say you're going to do it, that is the stock. That is the value behind self accountability. It has nothing to do with being judged. It has nothing to do with negative perceptions. Throw that out the window. That ain't got nothing to do with it. Self accountability is no more than you telling yourself, I'm going to show up for myself, as myself, how I need to. And that's it. And that should just be your guiding light for it. It'll be uncomfortable at first, but we can all do it. I'm trying to think of a moment where self accountability may have eluded me, or maybe a moment where it was perhaps imminent and I didn't see it as that. And I can't readily think of any. I can't readily think of any. I think I do a really good job of opening myself up to be wrong because I wanted this to be like a lesson from the Michael experience perspective. But what I will say is my process is to walk into every situation and saying that I don't mind being wrong. I walk into every situation and I say, I don't mind being wrong. Now, let me give you some context about wrong and right, in my opinion. I believe that there are a set of actions, responsibilities, characteristics that are innate to some, that are uniquely individual, and that are custom to each and every person. So everybody basically has their own way about in which they do things, in which they need things, and in which they respond to things. And so when I look at right and wrong in the context of that, it is highly subjective and it's based on what your situation calls for. Something that feels good for me may not feel good for you. So I don't want to, oh, well, that's right and that's wrong in this context. There's a much broader context that in society, right? We're not talking about that. Stay on topic. But as it pertains to that, I really try to stay away from right and wrong language because it is highly subjective. And our needs, wants, desires, ambitions, our pathways, our knowledge, our skill sets, they're vastly different. So, what may work for you may not work for me. But to negate walking into every situation feeling like I'm that one. Now, I do feel like I'm that one in a lot of ways, but I'm not the only one. I'm not that only one that matters. Everybody does. And so when I walk into situations and I know there could be some contention or there's going to be something that has to be dissected or disseminated, I go into it thinking first. I say, you know what? Walk into the situation and tell yourself you don't mind being wrong. And so when I walk into big meetings, when I walk into big crowds, when I walk into whatever space, I tell myself as a mechanism, I don't mind being wrong. And what that does for me is it keeps me from being defensive when somebody challenges my thought or my position in a real and meaningful way. Now, there are people that try to attack and things like that. I try to recenter those conversations because then we're stepping into another realm when you're willfully trying to do something. Now that's different for me, y'all. So don't think I'm telling you to roll over and be no punk, okay? I'm telling you situational awareness is just as important as self-awareness, okay? All right, check yourself before you wreck yourself. But if I walk into situations and I say I do not mind being wrong, that just allows me to listen. It allows me to not internalize. It allows me to not assign my own personal beliefs, my own perspective about success and what I would like in my house or what I would like my house to look like, my lifestyle. It allows me not to place and project that on other people as if we want the same things. And it provides a space for a much wider conversation and a variation in thoughts and opinions. And even if I am the facilitator, if I am the person that is, directing the conversation, it makes me a better director. And it also allows me to take in more and then put out more. And then one of the things that it allows me to do is to create some intersection and some cohesiveness when it comes to action planning. Because although all of us may not get everything that we want in this, we're all going to leave here with something that we want or something that we need. And that's a win at the end of the day that I put something in your cup as opposed to just taking it out and throwing it away. And so that is one example that I can give you where I've taken, some missteps in accountability and said, okay, I noticed that wrong word, that right and wrong situation is one that gets caught up in my conversations. And so I'm going to dismantle it and I'm going to use it as a developmental tool and not to be defensive. Because really, I want to learn about people, I want to understand. And then I also want to action plan at the end of the day because why we having all this conversation and ain't nobody took nothing from it. Okay. So yours may be different, right? It could be a number of things. It can be when people mention a certain situation, right? Maybe if it's too close to how you grew up, or maybe it's too close to a bad relationship of some sort, romantic or otherwise, maybe you shut down in those moments and that causes you not to be accountable. Maybe if somebody looks a certain way, right? So now you've generalized a population or group of people. And so in those moments, you lack the accountability because they're automatically wrong and you're right. I'm going to tell you guys this because I just had this thought. One of the things that I hate seeing, and this may be a little tangent, but this is my show, so we're going to do it, ain't we? I hate when people take zodiac signs and assign them to people's characteristics. Now, listen here. As an energy being and a spiritual being, I do believe that there's something about being born in a certain air, under certain stars, in the midst of certain, environmental and global events. I do believe that the time of day or time of night may influence something about the energy in your body, whether your blood was free flowing fast or your blood had slowed down in that moment. I don't know. Or your eyes got bigger under the night stars, or you closed them under the gazing glare of the bright morning sun. I don't know. I don't know. But I do feel like there's something by way of energy that is there. But when we get to these places where people are like, oh, I dated a Leo, I dated a Pisces. I dated a Scorpio. I say, dear Jesus, people, my God, on today. And I find myself saying, y'all do know that there are murderers from January through December, right? They was born from the 1st through the 31st if the month they're in allows it. There's been somebody that shoplifted from January through December and day 1 through day 31 if they month allowed it. It's been somebody that cheated from January to December. So I tell people all the time, like, stop using stuff like that to generalize and scapegoat and to get around being accountable and responsible for getting to know people, right? Every zodiac sign, my God, today is going to have some connotation based on something crazy. And it has nothing to do with the celestial powers that be, honestly. Now let's just keep it a buck. The stuff that y'all be throwing out there has nothing to do with celestial energy at all. At all. Or planet. It has nothing to the things that y'all are talking about ain't got nothing to do with that. So we got to do better at being accountable, right? How we show up, how we interact, and how we move. But that is one of the things that I see just on a global scale that I'm like, are y'all being serious with me? And to be honest, when I find people who say those things and they say it with their whole chest, as some would say, I'm like, you're playing with me, right? I remember this guy said that to me. I said, you playing with me, right? And of course, I gave him my January through December analogy and whatnot. But I was like, you playing with me, right? Do you know me and this gentleman went through? I said, okay. You told me you dated somebody that was an Aries. Okay, how did that work out? Oh, you dated a Gemini too. How did that work? You dated a Capricorn. That's who you're supposed to be compatible with, right? What happened with that one? Uh, it didn't work out. So people are people. People are people, and we have to do a better job of curating the interactions with those people and having the right conversations with those people. And then when we realize that those people ain't no good from January through December, from day 1 to day 31, when we realize that they are just not good people, it is our onus to just walk away. It don't matter if they're a Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. Oh, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius. I love you. Look at me singing Beyonce. She taught us something, didn't she? So, accountability in that, right? Have the right conversations and the interaction so that you're not blaming it on somebody's zodiac sign. That is preposterous. It is absolutely crazy. And then the kicker is, well, you said you was a Gemini, right? I did this one Gemini. Oh, he was terrible. He was better. Was he a late Gemini? Yeah, his birthday was the 25th. See, I'm an early Gemini. That's why that is. Get y'all get out of here with that foolishness. Get out of here with that foolishness. Anything but being accountable to the right actions. So I just implore us all to do better with self accountability and finding our why in the moment and finding our how in the moment. And again, this is not about you taking responsibility or accountability for what somebody else has done, because people move their own limbs, they move their own bodies, and they manifest their own thoughts. So I'm not charging you to that and that outcome. What I am charging you to is to do differently with how you interact when those things are happening so that you don't contribute to it, and so that those negative effects, consequences, perspectives, and outcomes don't bleed over into something else you have going on. Because one moment, although I don't believe one moment can define every moment, one moment can definitely spill over into a series of moments. And there can be underlying bias that happens. There could be underlined, self devaluation that happens, self doubt. There are just so many undercurrents that happen in those things, because it is the way that we socialize and we move around people, places, and things. And sometimes, like muscle memory, we just end up doing things before we even realize it. And if you don't have a good soundboard situation, a good support system to say, why do you keep doing that? I notice every time somebody say pickleball, your eye get to twitching. You know what I'm saying? Having an involuntary response to it. It's like muscle memory. So my hope is that we all walk away just thinking about how we can be accountable to ourselves, for ourselves, because that is the investment that you're going to make from this day to every day forward. And it's not about being defensive, it's not about being judged, it's about developing and growing. So, thank you all for joining the Michael Experience today. I hope that you learned something. As always, go out there and love on yourself before you can love on somebody else, okay? And I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace and love, y'all. Bye.